Welcome to Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories. Now I've got a smashing guest coming on today. Already had a quick chat, so without too much further ado, I'm gonna bring him in and let's welcome Walt. So Walt, welcome to Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories.
Well, thank you, Tim. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for the gracious welcome. It's been a while since I've had confetti as part of my introduction, and thank you also for this amazing service that you offer. And when I say service, I mean to something larger, this idea that we can capture seemingly everyday stories, and in their own way, they are remarkable and important and worthy of hearing. So I'm so delighted that as somebody so ordinary, I have an invitation to share my story. So with a lot of
I- I'm
gratitude,
I'm
it's a beautiful
sure
morning to be
yours is
here.
going to be extraordinary. Well, Walt, so if you can tell me when and where you were born, and if you can describe to me what it was like where you grew up, the schools you went to, and the education that you received. So the floor is yours for a few minutes.
Okay. So give me the hook if I go on for too long. I was born not where I grew up. So I spent the first 6 years of my life in Lompoc, California, which is kind of Ronald Reagan country. It's very cowboy country. My dad was a cowboy. He was a healer. He liked to rodeo, and he was a teacher. Both my parents were teachers. So I grew up in cowboy country on horseback. That was an important part of our lives on the Central Californian coast. And from there, my parents had a vision to um, to have a farm in Oregon with some acreage. So the next step was to move up to Oregon, buy a lot of land, and um, and try our hand at farming. It was not a successful endeavor, and our crop that we had hoped for wasn't viable. But that did bring us to Oregon, and Oregon is the place where I really think that I grew up. When I think about my childhood, I did first grade through 12th grade in Oregon. And let me set the scene for you. This was outside the town of Yoncalla, Oregon, which had a population of maybe 900 people at the time. I think it's even fewer now. And what we're seeing at the time I was growing up in the 70s and 80s was this timber boom um, that that drove the industry in Oregon through the 50s and the 60s was now starting to die out due to automation. But the logging industry was still the primary thing there. But because it was shrinking, you could see a little bit of the toughness and maybe some poverty that was being left behind. So I felt that as I look back on it, at least, I grew up in kind of a tough place. Um, Logging kids, some fighting, a lot of drugs, and it's only gotten worse. So now for a while at least, it's been overtaken by methamphetamine, as you so often see in these towns that get left behind by industry. And I would say they're in the middle of the transition from the boom to kind of the emptiness that was left behind. Um, so in my life, um, I I didn't feel like I belonged there. I do now. Like when I go back, it feels very familiar but at the time, I felt the need to get out of there. Um, to give you an idea, there were only 30 kids in my class, and we were mostly intact as a class from first grade, starting at age 6, through 12th grade when we graduate from high school around age 18. There are 30 of us. Most of us were together through all of that. Of the 30, I think I was the only one initially that went to college, maybe two of us. Um, and at least six of us are dead already, right? We graduated in 1988. I'm 53 years old, and disproportionately, we have lost members of our class. Some of those have been beaten to death, right? This is a tough place that I come from, these logging towns in Oregon. And I'd also offer extraordinarily beautiful, heart-achingly beautiful in those Oregon mountains and hills and the green lushness. Um, and I still feel really connected to that, to the beauty. And the other thing that I would share is despite the toughness of the town, it attracted some truly, truly remarkable human beings. So there was a real balance to that toughness. Um, and if I can tell just really quick biographies of just three of the people that this town attracted, or or at least part of the fabric of the town. One was a man named Lee Whipple, who was a dear friend of our family, and he had been in his church the leader of race relations in Chicago at one point. So he personally planned marches with Martin Luther King Jr. and with Jesse Jackson. And he was an activist in Chicago during a very tumultuous time. And yet somehow he ended up in this little town of Yoncalla. And then there was Rex Applegate. And you might even know Rex Applegate. In following World War II, he wrote a book called Kill or Be Killed. And special forces in the US uh, through Vietnam and maybe even still now are required to read Kill or Be Killed. And yet in this small town was Rex Applegate. And he was one of the pioneers. His family, the Applegates, were the pioneers in Yoncalla, and his daughter's a somewhat famous author, all from this small town in Oregon. And then let me really quickly share this story of Dr. Lydia. So Dr. Lydia was she grew up Amish in Iowa, and she had 11 brothers. And she convinced her family to send her to medical school, and they did. So she went to Iowa City to the University of Iowa. And then in World War II, the Navy put out a call for female doctors. They were hoping to attract 300 female doctors. I think they got four. And Dr. Lydia was one of them. So she went off to be a doctor in World War II. And during that time, she met her husband, a Marine Corps warrant officer who went by the name of Jeep. And then the two of them settled in Yoncalla after the war because Jeep was in the logging industry. And Dr. Lydia was this amazing woman who fed my intellectual curiosity. She's constantly giving me books and holding scientific conversations with me and inviting me into those conversations. She really, truly invested in me. And it's by no coincidence that my daughter's name is Lydia, named after this wonderful, wonderful woman who is so remarkable in this town of Yoncalla and so important in my own life. So that's a little bit about the town in which I grew up. I was on the outskirts of town on a ranch and working really hard. There were a lot of chores. We had sheep, we had horses, occasionally we had cattle. There was always work to do, and that was really my life. Early morning chores, afternoon chores, evening chores. Um, so that's a little bit about my history there in Oregon.
Wow. Sounds like a great little place to grow up, and obviously with some famous people there as well, including yourself, obviously.
I don't think I qualify as famous, but we're
Well,
working
I think we should
on
find out, shall
somebody
we?
who creates. I say again.
So we should find out.
We shall.
So let's have a look at then at uh, so you moved up from cowboy country to Oregon, which is, I mean, a logging country. I mean, it's big country up there and all the rest of it. Trying to set up a farm. So what was the crop that you thought you'd make some money out of, and why did it fail?
Yeah, I think my parents were hoping to do a sort of wheat crop. So we bought 350 acres and it proved not to be viable. I was about 6 and 7 years old when this was in process, so I don't have a deep understanding um, why it didn't work, but this is what I remember, Tim. I remember that we didn't have a lot of money at that time. And to compensate, we would go out on our farm and we'd have a picnic, and my dad would bring a gun. And then eventually, a buck would wander within range of our picnic, and my dad would drop the buck, and then we would field prep it and then take it back to the house and cut it up. But this was poaching, right? This wasn't legal hunting, but we were doing it really for survival, right? This was our meat. Were the deer that we were killing on our own property. That's what was sustaining us there for a little while.
Hmm.
Eventually, the ranch that we ended up on was only a mile away, so we ended up there in 1977. So it was more of a hobby ranch of only 50 acres. So we
Hmm.
sold the original one, and my parents went back to teaching, and I feel like the economics stabilized at that point.
Yeah. Well, maybe I can shed just a tiny little bit of light on why the wheat crop would have failed up in Oregon. When you look at
I
America, you've got you've got the Great Plains, which have massive areas of wheat that's grown, and you just wouldn't be able to compete. I guess
For sure. And I
that's
and I don't I
possibly
think
a
it was
reason that
actually
it
about
didn't
the
kind of work.
viability of the crop to grow there. But you're right, from market standpoint, it might have been problematic. It's just occurred to me for the very first time. So I am gluten free in my own life for preference and health reasons. It never occurred to me that perhaps I'm gluten free because of the failure of my family's dreams back in 1976, or maybe it's just coincidence.
Hmm. So you moved down to a smaller farm or a ranch. So did you have your own horse? And was it a
I
quarter horse?
Yes. Yes and yes. So Murphy was my quarter horse, 16 hands tall, remarkably tall horse, far too tall for me. And so I grew up riding every day, but not with the passion that my dad would have preferred. My dad was a city kid that always knew he was a cowboy and identified as cowboy from the earliest age. And he himself, from San Diego, um, figured out how to ride and then ended up pursuing his life in rodeo and as a cowboy. So my passion was insufficient for my dad. My sister's passion around horses was insufficient. So probably when we were 12 or so, my dad couldn't stand it any longer, and he sold the horses. So the horses we had were his old roping horses, and I think that was probably a really sad day for him, though, right? That his
Hmm.
his kids weren't following his hopes and dreams
Yeah.
around horses, but we enjoyed it, but it wasn't our thing.
Hmm.
So we moved on from that. I moved on from that. My sister moved on from that.
So you didn't get to sort of practice roping some steers and going out onto the plain and bringing in the herd and stuff like that. Then round up.
Not too much. Not too much. I mean, my dad taught me to rope, right? That was
Hmm.
important to him. But in fact, his let me lift up my let me lift up my laptop here, and for your viewers, if not your listeners, I can show you in the background here. That is my dad's
Hey.
roping saddle in my office, and my dad's lasso. So you can see that his legacy is still with me and still important to me.
Sweet. So let's have a look at your school then. So you started school up in Oregon, first grade. What was the class like? What was the school like? Was it just one of these small country sort of one room schoolrooms, or was it something a bit more substantial?
So it was somewhere in between. It was a little school called Scotts Valley. It was part of the Yoncalla School District, which was only really three schools, um, Scotts Valley Elementary and high school. But Scotts Valley only had first and second grade. And there were two first grade classes of probably 15 people each. And Miss Patterson was my first grade teacher. And again, I was already late to this party, Tim. Like the class was already formed in kindergarten. So I showed up in first grade clearly as an outsider. And I truly felt like I was an outsider first through 12th, even though I was with that class for 12 years. They were already formed by the time first grade happened for me. So I was always the new kid or
Mm.
I felt like the new kid at least for 12 years. It's probably my own thing, not theirs. So yeah, this just little rural school with four classrooms and a big dome gym with ropes for
So
rope
how far
climbing
away
hanging down.
was the school from your little ranch then?
Oh, probably um,
Did you have to get a big yellow bus?
well, here's the thing. My mom also taught at Scotts Valley School, so I got a ride
Ah,
from my mom because she was one of the four teachers there.
so you didn't have
But it
to
was a
ride your horse in
15
then.
minute. I did not. It was about a 15-minute drive.
All right. So it's a bit of a distance then. So going up into third grade then, into what would be, I guess, elementary. So
Yes,
how was that? Was that in a different school, different away from where you were from the?
it was. It was actually in the town of Yoncalla, and what I remember most about those uh, early elementary school years is just this love for foursquare and handball played with essentially a volleyball against an exposed wall on the big boiler room at the school. So I just remember the morning. But at that point, I was taking the bus, so the bus would drop me off early at school, and that was just time time for play. And again, I was with the same class in a small town like Yoncalla. You know everybody in the school from third to eighth grade. Um, the eighth graders might not know the third graders, but the third graders definitely know the eighth graders. That's just a matter of survival.
Yeah, just keeping out the big boys' way.
Exactly.
So so the area was sort of predominantly logging, I guess. At those that sort of coming out of the logging eras. Did you get involved in that industry at all? Did was that part of the schooling that they educated you on what logging was all about, what sustained the area?
It was not. Um, Again, the industry was starting to become automated to the point where you see less and less of the families in the area participating in logging. Certainly, there were some fallers. The toppers were almost all gone by then. During the summers, when I was in high school, some of my classmates were choker setters. So when they're dragging the logs up the hillside, either by tower or by skidder, because once you fall the logs, you have to get them up these high hills. Some of my classmates would get involved in the choker setter, which you have to wrap this cable around the trunk of the tree and attach it. It's really dangerous work. It's really hard work. It's very physical work. And they would come back from at the end of the summer, very, very lean, and knotted with muscle from that work, ready for the football season. American football, of course, for us.
Hmm.
And so a few of my classmates participated. I was always involved during the summer with the haying and the farm work,
Mm,
not the logging work personally.
yeah. So, what was your favourite lesson at that time? What's a lesson
Mhm.
was you so keen to get up in the morning for? Hadn't slept all night because you're dying to get to school to go to this particular lesson. What was that?
I had a real interest in astronomy at the time. I just felt so much wonder in the expanse of the universe. And I felt, and we're in such a remote area that the stars were so pronounced. My mom still lives on the ranch where I grew up. So I'm there every summer, and it's my son's favorite place in the world. He can't wait to
Mm,
go to the ranch and run around, and the stars are still magnificent there. So, because I so often was doing chores before sunrise and after sunset, I got to see the stars, particularly the winter stars,
mm,
and they became really familiar. So I remember when I was 13, I put all my money that I'd saved into a big Newtonian reflector telescope, and so I would
oh,
take the telescope out into the yard in the evenings and do my best with my rudimentary skill set to explore the sky with that.
mm. And I guess it's all Oregon's in the north of the country. Did you experience the northern lights at all?
Once, one early morning, I had an experience that could have only been the Northern Lights, although I would say it didn't look like what you traditionally see with these wavy green
Mm,
palettes in northern Norway, but it was a fascinating trick of light where I can't even probably describe it. The only way I could do it would be to draw it, but they were square blocks of light that
mm.
pushed across the sky, and it was a one-time event in my life that was so remarkable that sticks with me. I've never seen anything like it, and I don't think anybody else saw it either.
Brilliant. So, um, what subject did you not like going to? What one did you sort of try and pull a sickie and stay in bed for?
Hmm. I liked school. Now you have to remember the education you're getting in Yoncalla, Oregon, might not be as challenging as other schools, right? The value around education. Again, I was only one of a handful of people in my class that even went to college. So the value was a little different. But it did this funny thing, Tim, being in the school. So I liked all the subjects, to answer your question. Maybe a little less keen on math, but I enjoyed school. Um, and it left me with this sense that I was really, really smart because I liked school and I did well in school and I was rewarded by my teachers as being like the one guy that liked school there and could meet standards. So I thought I was an academic hero. You know, life being what it is, I've now met a lot of really smart people and it's humbling and I'm like, oh, okay. My intellect is quite average. Um, but at the time, I felt extraordinary. But there was something about that too that I carried with me. So when I went to university, I expected to perform. I expected to get good grades, and I expected to have relationships with my professors because I'd always had relationships with my teachers in school. And so I did carry that into university, and that did serve me.
Mm. So coming back a little bit, then you mentioned American football coming back after the summer for the football season. Did you play American football yourself?
I did. I did. You're expected to. Like in small town
Fair.
Oregon, every able-bodied male and one female played on the high school team. Like all of us
Mm.
played. Like we all
So
were
what
part of
what
that.
position did you play?
So I played on both sides of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, I was an offensive guard, and on the defensive side, I was a linebacker.
Oh, I love linebackers. I was
Yes.
I used to play American football back in the back end of the '80s for a team over here in England called the Milton Keynes Pioneers, and I
Yes, I
always
knew that
played
about
left.
you, Tim.
I played left linebacker, and
Okay.
yeah, I played it for a good couple of years, and then I went and helped a mate out and played for a team in the lower division, and I had an absolute brilliant game. I had half a dozen sacks, and I totally dominated their opposition, which was great fun. We won the game.
So, yeah, so linebacker is the best position by far because it's so
Yeah.
versatile. But I think I still have nerve damage from playing that position in my neck, right? Like I don't think I've ever fully recovered from the physical violence that I experienced over 6 years of playing American football. Like it
Mm.
still shows up. I like to box. And when I box, if I get hit a certain way, I'm like, oh, my entire left
Yeah.
side will go numb. I'm like, okay, that's left over from my football days.
The old Marquis of Queensbury rules, eh?
Is well, mostly against a punching bag these days. It feels
Yeah.
it feels better at my age.
Yeah, they don't punch back.
Not not so far.
So, moving forward then, your high school. Was that in a different school again, or was it in the same building as the elementary?
It was in a different school, but within half mile of the elementary, so
And
they were
so
close.
you're still jumping on the big yellow bus in the morning?
So I started driving at age 14. I got my license. So by the time I hit high school, I was driving to school.
Ah. You can drive at 14 in America.
Um, I had a special, I had a special license to drive a couple years early. So the really quick story around that, I don't think I've told this story in decades. My dad was a teacher at the adjacent high school, the rival high school that was 5 or 6 miles away. And so the class he taught, I didn't have at my own high school, but wanted to take. So the reason I got a driver's license so young was so that I could drive during once a day to my dad's high school, take his class, and then drive back to my high school. So that's that the state allowed me to get a driver's license at 14 to accommodate that.
Wow. So what car did you get? What car was you allowed to drive? I bet it wasn't a big Chevy with a V8 engine in, was it?
So it wasn't. It was my grandmother's 1971 Ford Maverick was
Oh,
was the car.
wicked.
I haven't the Maverick didn't really survive in the classic car circle, but I saw one in the last year of a similar vintage and color, and a lot of stuff came rushing back. Even the smell of the car, it just came rushing back when I saw this vintage Maverick parked along the side of the street sometime in the last 12 months.
Brilliant. So moving on then. So did you do any other sort of other extracurricular? I can't even say it now. Activities at school? Did you do like band or theatre studies, or was it just concentrating on the sports?
Football was really my only sport, and then so FFA is this American um, club in high school, stands for Future Farmers of America. So because I was in agriculture growing up, um, then I was very active in FFA, and that's where a lot of leadership development happen, as it can in any club, but
Yeah.
at least organizational leadership. I define leadership probably quite differently at this phase of my life than I did in high school. But the organizational kind, where you can participate in a club and do public speaking and those kinds of things, I was very active in that through FFA.
So coming to the end of your high school, then, did you graduate with honours?
I did. I was top of my class again. I think no disrespect to my classmates who were wonderful people whom I love to connect with from time to time, but just the academic rigor there was was insufficient enough that yes, I did graduate as um, at the top of my class with straight A's in high school.
Wow. And what about your prom? Did you have a prom? Did you go to prom? Did you have the tuxedo and the young lady on your arm with a corsage?
Those things happened. I was known to go to other high schools' proms, maybe a little bit, and then I did go to my senior prom with Carol Magnus, one of my close friends and crushes from FFA. She went to a different high school, and Carol did me the honor of joining me for my high school prom, and and I can't emphasize enough, Tim, what a socially awkward mess I was at that phase of my life. Like everybody looks back on that phase and thinks that they're a socially awkward mess. I am telling you, Tim, like I was in the 99th percentile of socially awkward messes. So also my apologies to Carol Magnus for being such a mess.
Brilliant. So after you graduated, after your prom, what did you do? What was the first thing you did once you'd left high school?
So I knew I wanted to leave. It was kind of an interesting time in my life. My dad had lung cancer. He was dying. Maybe the instinct of many people would have been to stay home, but I had a really strong instinct to get out of state and to get far out of state. So I'd applied for a Navy ROTC scholarship. This is the Reagan era when they were giving out scholarships like hotcakes, even to socially awkward messes like me. So I got this scholarship, this Navy scholarship, which I could apply to pretty much any school I could get into. So I ended up starting my education at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana, on this Navy scholarship. Um, I went from the beautiful mountains of Oregon, where I felt deeply connected to the landscape, to the Midwest, where they really could grow wheat, and and learned that that was not my place. Like I did not appreciate it there, and I wasn't doing myself any favors. Again, I'm serious when I say this. Like social awkwardness was really emerging in the college phase too. I was not really finding my way, and so I was driving back from West Lafayette to Oregon after one of my school years, and happened to be passing through Boulder, Colorado. And I drove over the hill and I saw this remarkable place, this beautiful place, this special place. And I'm like, oh, people get to go to college there at the University of Colorado. And so I immediately submitted my application to the University of Colorado, convinced the Navy somehow they were begrudging around it to transfer my scholarship to the University of Colorado. And then I completed my university education there. We're talking today, I'm in Boulder, Colorado today. I've been a professor at the University of Colorado. So I have and you'll appreciate this also. The University of Colorado football team plays in Folsom Stadium. My son's middle name is Folsom. So I do have some attachment to this place.
So so what was your major then?
So my major was journalism, and I've done nothing in journalism ever, but that was my major.
So what did you minor in?
I don't think I had a minor. I didn't have a minor. I was doing the Navy thing, of course. Um, but I was starting to come out of my socially awkward phase in whatever that looked like. And there were so many beautiful women that were attracted to journalism that it felt like the minor itself was embedded in the program I'd chosen as a major, right? It's just kind of all right there.
Terrific. So, how long was your degree and what did you do at the end of it?
So the degree is traditionally a four-year degree, and just through having way too much fun, I dragged that out into 5 years, much to the Navy's frustration. But eventually, I did graduate and had to commission. So I was commissioned as an ensign in the United States Navy as part of my obligation to pay back that scholarship. And then I'd earned a spot in flight school. So I spent an extra year in grad school, and then it was off to flight school in Pensacola.
So, what what part of flying did you take part in? What which part of the aviation did you get?
Yeah, so I can take you back to kindergarten. There's one thing I didn't tell you about kindergarten, and that was, so this was still in California, but Mrs. Burka, my kindergarten teacher, asked us to draw what we wanted to do when we grow up, and also to write what we wanted to do. Of course, we're kindergartners, so she helped us with the writing. And I drew a picture of a helicopter and wrote, "When I grow up, I want to be a helicopter pilot." This was when I was 5. So that picture that I grew in kindergarten still hangs on my childhood wall on a ranch in Oregon. So I had this sense when I was 5 I wanted to be a helicopter pilot. So that was always with me in some sense. And so when I got to flight school, we all start off together in fixed wing. So I was flying fixed wing, and it came time to select what we were going to do next. I happened to go through during a jet draft. Everybody was getting pushed into those now old F-18 Charlies. But at the time, that's if you had sufficient grades, that was the expectation. And I'd done well in flight school. So I had to fight a little bit to fly helicopters. That wasn't the expectation. And we always need helicopter pilots, always. And so I was able to select helicopters, and that was where I belonged. That was absolutely the right place for me. And I had a sense of that, and I knew that. So I flew helicopters in the Navy.
Wow. So, what was the first helicopter that you flew? We'll just go
Oh,
back
so
one
that was
second.
the,
You mentioned the F 18.
yeah,
Was it the F 18s or the 111s? Were they around about the same
18.
time?
So at the time, so 111's an Air Force jet. So for us, the fast movers were the 14s were still in service, but they were winding down. The F-18s were coming online, so Alphas and Charlies. Um, so that was kind of the time frame there in the early 90s to mid 90s, but not 111s. So it's definitely the original Hornets that
Yeah, and
that
they
the
land on the
Navy was
deck, don't
going
they?
to. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, these are all carrier based jets. But those
So
I
so
didn't
you,
fly those.
so you moved on to the helicopters. You got a spot as a helicopter pilot, and you clearly graduated flying helicopters. What was the first helicopter you flew?
Well, the trainer is this little orange and white Jet Ranger. I think we I think we designated it the 47, the TH-47. It's funny that eludes me, but it's this little orange and white civilian Jet Ranger that was really fun to fly. Like I really felt the love of
Mm.
flying and the passion of flying in that. um, and like to think that I had some aptitude for it from the beginning.
Yeah. So I guess to fly a helicopter, you got to be able to coordinate your hands and your feet all going in different
Yep,
directions
yep.
at the same time.
It is a kind of unique skill set. Like there's this sense I think out there that helicopters like hover naturally, and
Mm.
convincing a helicopter to hover is actually a really acquired skill set. What they actually want to do is flip upside down and explode. That's the inclination of a helicopter. So hovering is this act of convincing them to not flip upside down, and it requires a lot of it requires constant input just to hover. And then of course you learn the skill
Mm.
sets to aggressively move from forward flight to hover, from backward flight to hover. It all
Yeah.
builds up as a muscle memory over time. So that was the training helicopter. My first fleet helicopter was the H-46. It's a tandem rotor helicopter. It looks a lot like a Chinook. They're both
Mm.
Boeing products, um, but it was the shipboard compatible Chinook, and that helicopter was my first true love. It was a
Yeah.
50s era helicopter. It was hard to fly. A lot of missions were inaccessible if you weren't really um, a solid pilot working with a solid crew. It required a lot. It demanded a lot of the pilot
Mm.
to fly the 46, but it was such a, to me, beautiful, soulful. Um, just I think to this day that it's the most beautiful aircraft that the Navy's ever flown. Now,
Mm.
that's that's
So
a
so
lot of
what's the
people.
difference between that and the Chinook then?
Chinook's about a third bigger, and kind of because the placement of the engines, the Chinook. So what was beautiful about the 46, because it's tandem rotor and you don't have that tail rotor, which is essentially an unstable aerodynamic force at the end of a moment arm, um, because of tandem rotor essentially makes a helicopter unidirectional, right? It wants to fly as naturally sideways as it does rearward as it does forward. And the Chinook has these weird external engines, so I don't think it flies particularly well sideways because it creates. I mean, sorry to get too technical here, but it creates, I believe, some airflow issues with those external engines. But the
Mm.
46 flew as well sideways as it did rearward, and it was this really kind of nimble thing. I think of the Chinook as this big, cumbersome, powerful thing. It is a very powerful aircraft. The 46 itself was quite underpowered, but it was very, very agile
Mm.
and smaller and lighter than the Chinook. So for me, it was really, really a joy to fly. I loved that helicopter.
Mm. So you've graduated on this and you got your first draft from Pensacola. Where did the Navy see fit to send you with your
Well,
new
then from
helicopter?
Pensacola, it was Pensacola, then to Corpus Christi, then to Pensacola, and then to San Diego for another 8 months of training and burritos every day, and then to Guam. So my first fleet tour was in Guam. I was with a outfit with a squadron called HC5 that was based on Anderson Air Force Base, and we deployed in small units to ships all over the globe. So we'd fly onto ship out of Guam, and then that ship would usually to take us to Asia, to Central Asia. We spent a lot of time in the Persian Gulf, of course. I spent
Mm.
many, many summers in the Persian Gulf flying helicopters off of ships. That was just a normal part of my life. So hot. There's no describing how hot that was, Tim. There's no
And then you got the
describing.
added
It
heat of the
was,
helicopter as well.
yes, exactly. And there was no air conditioning in the 46. Like that wasn't something that anybody thought of in 1950s building
Well, you
military
couldn't open the
helicopter.
window.
So you could open the window, and when I flew sideways, my sweat would splatter all over co-pilot when the window was open. So it was so hot. People don't understand. I say, yeah, no, it was, it, it, our thermometer would peg at 50 degrees Celsius, which, if I
Yeah.
do the conversion correctly to Fahrenheit, I think that's 1 million degrees Fahrenheit, but I'm not sure. But it would
Yeah.
peg
Close
at
to it
50
anyway.
degrees. Yeah, it would peg. And it was so humid there that we're in a constant fog. And, part of that heat was because we're sitting on the tarmac of the flight deck of a
Yeah.
ship. Part of it was ambient, but it was hot. It was too hot to touch the helicopter without gloves. It was so incredibly hot and humid there. Never
Mm.
experienced anything like that.
So where was the favourite place you served? Where did they send you that you really enjoyed?
I really enjoyed Guam. Honestly, I actually ended up doing 2 tours there. So, there was the first tour, and then I went back to San Diego for another 3 years as an instructor pilot, and then I returned to Guam for another few years, again as a fleet pilot. Um, I enjoyed Guam. Guam itself is fine. Guam can be beautiful. Um, I just liked that squadron. So in the U.S.
Mm.
military, the further you get away from Washington, D.C., usually the better things are in the service. So Guam was sufficiently far from Washington, D.C., that it
Mm.
was able to create this really unique community and culture, and a really fun. It attracted a really interesting group of misfit pilots. And then, of course, I always love the sailors, right? The sailors that do all the
Mm.
work, the sailors that keep the aircraft flying, the sailors that do everything that allows for the mission to happen. Particularly, boy, those rescue swimmers that were in the back, our crewmen and rescue swimmers, were just heroes
Mm.
to me. Just really remarkable. So yeah, it was just this great community, these great people in this wild and unexpected place of Guam. And I always cherish my time there. And I'd say another place I really enjoyed. We spent 3 years in Brussels when I did some intel for NATO. So I was a little bit more senior in my career, but I really enjoyed my time in Brussels and working with the
Mm.
international military community as well.
So where's the one place that you really don't want to ever go back to that they sent you?
Pensacola. Pensacola. My God. I'll go back to Afghanistan before I go to Pensacola again. Like I just the American South. Like I love that there are Americans who love the American South and identify strongly there. I'm very happy for them. The American
Mm.
South is this weird, elusive place to me that I don't quite understand. That's okay. Again, that's about me. It's not about the American South. But for me, it just feels incompatible. Pensacola is just
Mm.
a weird damn place for me. Like I don't get it. I don't want to go back. Beautiful beaches. I will give them that. But just a culturally weird fit for me.
Yeah.
Is London calling, Tim? Is
Yeah.
that,
Um, Sorry about that.
we're good.
So you mentioned Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Did you get to Afghan?
I did. I spent a year there in
One tour.
2011, 2012. Yeah, one tour. But it's just uh, I'm sure you know what a REMF is. But
Yeah.
I was rear echelon. I was staff. I was not doing anything productive or useful in Afghanistan. Just kind of perpetually exploring the frustration of service culture incompatibilities. That was my life, like
So
fighting
whereabouts were you
battles.
based in Afghan?
I was technically based in Kabul. I was able to travel around a little bit, got to Bagram, got out in the field a little bit, got to Kandahar, but primarily I was in the city in Kabul.
Hmm. Yeah, I was in Kabul in 2002. I was there
Okay.
for
Oh wow,
five
yeah.
months when we
Yeah,
first went in.
that was a wild time. was a
That was a
different
brilliant
time,
time. Yeah, I really enjoyed the
particularly
time there.
somebody in your line of work.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
able to get out, just me and an interpreter, to wander around the closer parts to the
yeah,
city where we were working, walk around the bazaars and stuff like that. And that was really interesting, the work I was doing then. And then I went back again in 5, 6, and then again 8, 9. So I did 3
yeah,
tours, and
yeah. And you could
I
see
had a
it
brilliant
changing,
time.
I'm sure.
Yeah, a lot
Yeah.
of changes.
But yeah, that '02 time, that would have been crazy. Things were like so established. I mean, by the time you get a TGIF, thank God it's Fridays on the Kandahar Boardwalk, things
Yeah,
are
I know.
essentially stable. My personal opinion is that war should be painful. Like when you go to war, like you don't get a TGI
Yeah,
Fridays. You go to war, you do the job. Everybody suffers. Nobody makes a lot of money on the endeavor because there's so much pain in warfare. There's so much humanity lost in warfare that there should never be a TGI Fridays involved in that. But that's just
absolutely.
my own opinion. Um,
Yeah, we ended up with
so
Pizza Huts and all sorts. McDonald's, I think, was
yeah,
there. Starbucks. Yeah, it was a strange place, especially if you come out of a full patrol base, or coming out of a fob from the Sangin Valley and drop into to Kandahar to pick some stuff up. That was
yeah,
weird. I had a run
that
in
had
with
to have been.
a with a station warrant officer there. I've literally been in the field for a couple of weeks, and I'm stinking and then covered in dust and all the rest of it. And I've had to walk from the airhead down to some guys where I'm picking some stuff up to go back to the airhead. And I'm walking through. I haven't got taken my helmet off, and this guy starts shouting, "Oh, you, come here, talk to me. Where's your hat? What do you mean, where's my hat? It's hanging from me belt. No, where's your berry? I've just come out of the field. Leave me alone."
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so
they
that
had a funny
resonates
sense of
with me
humour there.
so much. I used to say, if you gathered all of the um, the sergeants major, all of the U.S. Army sergeants major across the theater, and you put them in a room and you gave them a choice. And the choice was, would you rather we defeated the Taliban and stabilized this country to a credible federal government to which the country was loyal? Or would you rather every single U.S. military member was wearing a glow belt with their uniform at the same time? I'm pretty sure the sergeants major would have chosen the glow belt option. That seemed disproportionately important to them.
I know, crazy. So, what was the worst tour that you did? Which one did you that really did not like, other than Pensacola?
Yeah, and I enjoyed Pensacola. I didn't get the American South so much. I don't. I mean, I didn't like Afghanistan, and it wasn't about Afghanistan. Like I liked Afghanistan; it was beautiful. I
It's the
loved
job.
the people that I met, but I was pushed onto a joint staff that was predominantly Army. Like I indicated earlier, I had some real cultural tensions with my Navy mindset, with the Army mindset, and I wasn't going to win that. The Army is too big, entrenched, powerful, overwhelming, connected, networked, right? Like my solo battle against the United States Army was a resounding defeat. I kind of got
Buckled to the
got
pressure.
my ass kicked primarily by the aforementioned sergeants major. They, I picked a battle that I lost hard. So I just it was kind of the cultural tension and being on this big, cumbersome, bureaucratic headquarters And I will say, I met some really wonderful, talented, well-intentioned people representing every service. Although consistently, the Marine Corps is my favorite. Whatever the Marine Corps is doing
Mm,
to select senior officers um, is, in my opinion, far, far more is a far better process that rewards moral courage rather than self-interest and careerism.
mm,
So I met a lot of Marines that I absolutely admired, but I met people from every service that I admired that really believed in the work. But I'll say overwhelmingly, by that point, 2011, 2012, it really felt like we were dishonest in what we were doing there. This is the first time I've ever said this outside of one-on-one conversation. Um, it really felt like we're trying to polish a turd that couldn't be polished, and we were saying things and doing things and investing things that felt misaligned with not only our strategic intentions and goals, but felt misaligned with who we are as a
mm.
service and who we are as Americans. We're investing, I thought, in some pretty bad stuff. And again, it, there were some wonderful people in all of that, but overwhelmingly, culturally, we were we were trying to say something was but it wasn't, right? And it didn't
Yeah,
feel good.
it's one of those places that has never been defeated, Afghanistan,
Right.
and I think it's the culture of the people, and if you don't understand the culture of people, and try and actually. My job in psychological operations is trying to get inside the minds of the local population to be able to and affect a change in an attitude and a behaviour. And it's such a difficult, complex people to try and understand, and we never did. And I think that was part of the problem, that we just didn't understand the population, and we were never going to affect a proper change in the country. It's just a shame that it went the way that it did in 2020, when the Americans just pulled out, and the whole place collapsed, and the Taliban came sweeping back in. And now it's heartbreaking to see what's been going on and what is going on there, particularly for the female population. But there you go. That's ancient history now, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I did my 23 years in the Navy. I retired as a commander. My last 40 years in the Navy were actually spent as a professor teaching at the University of Colorado, my alma mater, and I was teaching a leadership class. And so when I retired, while many of my squadron mates went to the airlines or into defense consulting, I, I felt this real calling from the universe. I felt this real nudge from the universe to go into something about leadership development. I became really passionate about that when I was teaching at the university. So when I did retire and was at a crossroads, I chose to I chose to market myself, to brand myself as a leadership development specialist. I went into corporate America in that role. I spent 3 years in a Fortune 200 healthcare company. And then sometime during that time, I became trained as an integral coach. And I have, for the last 4 years, been coaching full time as a one on one integral coach. And that is absolutely my calling, to serve others in their developmental journeys and allowing them to do the things that are most important to them in a way that amplifies their impact through their lives.
Wow. So that's what you're doing nowadays, then, and you're doing that in Boulder, Colorado.
Yep, I'm based out of Boulder, but a lot of my work, thanks really to COVID, is remote. So 90% of the time, I'm coaching just the way that we're talking now.
Fantastic. So how would people get hold of you if they want to use your services?
Well, if they are interested in talking about leadership, leadership development, team development, one on one coaching, if they're feeling stuck or hoping to get out of their own way and have a transformative growth experience, or just want to have a conversation around any of that, they can email me directly. Um, my email address is Walt, WALT, at tliftcoaching.com, TLIFT coaching, COACHING.com. So Walt at tliftcoaching.com. They can reach out directly, or they can go browse my website, which is just tliftcoaching.com. And there is a contact button there if they would like to reach out.
Fantastic. And I'll put all that down in the description, obviously.
Okay, thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. So there you go. You've had an extraordinary life.
Well, thank you, sir. I really feel like I'm at the beginning of it. I really feel that everything has led to a very, very important place, and I feel very poised to help create an important impact. So I feel like it's just beginning. I feel like it's new and fresh.
Well, let's wish you every success for the future then.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you again for the work that you're doing, Tim, and also for your important military service and the sacrifices that you made in that role.
Well, I think you've had a fantastic career as well, and thank you for your service. Flying helicopters isn't the easiest job in the world, especially if somebody's shooting at you.
Yeah, I didn't have too much of that. But it might not be the easiest job in the world, but I truly believe it's the most fun. Like I
Mm.
feel so fortunate to have something that I was so passionate about, and it's just truly, truly fun all the way through. So I feel blessed.
Well, thank you again. So brilliant to have a chat with you.
Likewise, I've enjoyed our time together today, Tim.
Well, there you go. That's Walt. Finished up as a commander in the US Navy, helicopter pilot. Oh, what a brilliant story. So if you do want to reach out to Walt, the details will be down in the description. So until the next one, TTFN. Ta-ta for now.